Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're heading back, way back, to the Jurassic period, specifically to China, to dig into the story of a really interesting dinosaur, Bellusaurus.
Yes, Bellusaurus, a great one to cover.
Our main source here is the Wikipedia entry, which pulls together quite a bit of the scientific research.
Right, it's a good starting point.
And our goal today is really just to understand what makes this beautiful lizard. That's what the name means, right? So intriguing.
Exactly.
How it was found, where it fits in the dinosaur family tree, and especially what the fact that we mostly have juvenile remains tells us.
Yeah, that juvenile aspect is key.
Okay, let's get into it.
Absolutely. Bellusaurus is, it's captivating. And that name, beautiful lizard, like you said, it's pretty memorable.
It is.
It comes from Vulgar Latin bellus, meaning beautiful, and then the ancient Greek sauros for lizard. Simple enough.
And it lived during the Oxfordian stage, late Jurassic.
That's right, the Oxfordian. So
Yep.
firmly in the late Jurassic period.
And where exactly geographically were these beautiful lizard bones turning up?
They've been unearthed in the Shishugu Formation. That's in the northeastern Zhangara Basin in China.
Okay.
It's a really significant spot, actually. It gives us a great window into late Jurassic life in that region.
Now, when I think sauropods, the long necks, I picture these absolutely enormous creatures.
Sure, the giants.
But Bellusaurus seems, well, kind of small based on the fossils.
That's right. The estimate we have puts it around 4.8 meters long. So, what, about 16 feet?
16 feet. Okay, yeah, definitely not one of the titans.
But, and this is the really crucial part we need to keep coming back to, that size is based on what look like juvenile specimens.
Juveniles. So we might not be seeing the full adult size at all.
Exactly. We probably aren't. And what's really interesting is how they were found, the remains of 17 individuals.
17.
Yeah, 17 Bellusaurus, all found together in just one quarry.
Wow. Okay, finding that many together must mean something. A herd.
Strongly suggests a herd, yeah. And based on certain bone features, the consensus is that these were all young individuals.
A whole group of youngsters.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder what happened. Sounds dramatic.
Well, the evidence points towards something pretty sudden, yeah. A catastrophic event. Most likely theory is a flash flood.
Flash flood. Okay.
Yeah, something that just overwhelmed the area and sadly killed the whole group at once. It paints a really vivid kind of tragic picture from millions of years ago.
Definitely. A young herd may be caught completely off guard. Do we have any clue how old they might have been? Roughly.
Based on fossil analysis, the estimate is they were only around 2 years old when they died.
2 years old.
Yeah.
That's incredibly young for potentially large animals.
It is. And what's also significant is that there are signs they were still growing and growing quite rapidly at that point. So it gives us this rare glimpse into, sauropod growth spurts in their early years.
That's fascinating. Snapshot of a species just starting out. Okay, let's circle back to the name. Beautiful lizard. Bellusaurus. What about the species name Sui?
Ah, right. The full name is Bellusaurus sui. It was formally described by the paleontologist Dong Zmiming back in 1991.
Okay.
And the species name sui, well, it partly comes from that Latin word bellus again.
Oh, again?
Yeah, sort of reinforcing the idea of a small, delicate, and, beautiful build for these dinosaurs.
So that idea of delicate beauty is really baked into the full name. But there's more to it, isn't there? A personal connection.
Yes, exactly. The specific name Suri was chosen to honor senior preparator Yuling Suri.
A preparator?
Yeah, someone who cleans and restores fossils. He was highly respected, a notable dinosaur fossil restorer. And Bellusaurus has this special significance because it was the last restoration project he actually worked on.
Oh, wow. That's a really wonderful way to acknowledge his work. A lasting tribute.
It really is. Very fitting.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Let's talk about where Bellusaurus fits in the bigger picture. Its place in the sauropod family tree. Sounds like that's been debated a bit.
That's putting it mildly. Yeah, it's been a bit of a moving target. So when Dong Ziming first described it, he put it in the family Brachiosauridae.
Brachiosauridae, like Brachiosaurus, the really tall one.
Well, yes and no. It's important to remember how classifications worked back then, or how that specific group was understood. Brachiosauridae was used more broadly.
How so?
It was kind of a catch-all for sauropods that had broad teeth, so it included things like Comorosaurus, Sichusaurus, even Euholopus. It didn't necessarily mean a super close relationship to Brachiosaurus itself, the one famous for the long front legs.
Ah, okay. So the initial classification wasn't necessarily saying it was a close cousin to the iconic tall Brachiosaurus we picture.
Not in the way we define those relationships today, no. Dom even proposed a new subfamily just for it, Bellusaurinae.
Bellusaurus.
And he suggested maybe Pluricolis, another sauropod, also known mainly from juvenile fossils, interestingly, might belong there too.
That makes sense.
It really highlights the challenge, doesn't it? Working with fossils, especially young ones. Juvenile features can sometimes obscure the connections to their adult relatives.
Yeah, I can see that. If you're only looking at the kids, figuring out their grown-up family ties must be tricky. So where have more recent studies put Bellusaurus?
More recent analyses using, more data and different methods have generally placed it a bit differently, either outside Neosauropoda entirely.
Neosauropoda being the sort of more advanced sauropods, including the really big ones.
Right, exactly. So either outside that group or perhaps near the base of Macronaria, which is another major group within Neosauropoda, basically seen as a potentially more early branching member of this whole radiation.
Okay, so potentially a bit more primitive or at least earlier off the main line than originally thought under that old Brachiosauridae definition.
No, there's a but then. There's always a but then in paleontology, isn't there? A study just last year, 2023, actually proposed Bellusaurus might be a Mamenchasaurid.
A Mamenchasaurid. Wow, okay, those are the ones with the incredibly, almost ridiculously long necks, right?
Exactly, famous for it. So if that placement holds up, it really changes how we think about Bellusaurus and its connections.
That's a huge shift from maybe being more basal to being related to the super long-necked giants.
It is. It just shows how dynamic this field is. New research, new data can really shake things up.
Definitely. Now, we know we have a good amount of material, but it's disarticulated, right? The bones weren't found all connected.
That's correct. Lots of individual bones, but not, a nice, complete skeleton laid out as it was in life.
So what can we still learn from that kind of material, especially from these juveniles?
Oh, quite a lot, actually. Even disarticulated bones allow for very detailed anatomical studies. And recent work, particularly a 2018 study, focused specifically on the skull of Bellusaurus.
The skull, wait, what can that tell us?
Skulls are gold mines. They give clues about diet, senses, brain structure, and crucially for classification. Lots of detailed features that help figure out relationships with other sauropods.
Right.
And looking at juvenile skull development like this is super valuable. It helps us understand how sauropods changed as they grew up their ontogeny and how different groups might be linked through those growth patterns.
So even though we're dealing with, like, dinosaur teenagers here, these fossils are still incredibly important for understanding the bigger picture of sauropod evolution.
Absolutely. They offer a window into growth and development that we don't always get. Studying these juvenile features helps us trace the evolutionary path of the whole group. It's like studying baby teeth to understand adult teeth reveals important patterns.
Well, this has been a really fascinating deep dive into Bellusaurus, a small, probably quite beautiful sauropod, likely caught young in a devastating flood, and whose place in the dinosaur family tree is, well, still very much an active discussion.
That sums it up well. It's a great reminder that even dinosaurs we think we sort of know can still throw surprises our way.
Definitely.
So just to recap quickly, we've touched on the name. It's late Jurassic home in China. The discovery of that herd of juveniles, killed by a flood.
Right, the naming tribute.
The tribute to Yuling Sui, yeah. And the evolving ideas on its classification from that older brachiosaurid concept to maybe being basal to now possibly a Mamenchasaurid relative.
And the value of those juvenile bones, especially the skull study.
Exactly, still yielding insights.
So here's something to chew on, maybe.
Yeah.
Since every single Bellusaurus fossil we have seems to be from a juvenile.
Yeah.
What might a fully grown adult have actually looked like?
Right.
And, how different might it have been? If we found a complete adult skeleton, could it completely change everything we think we know about its relationships?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It absolutely could. It keeps paleontologists digging, keeps the story evolving.
It certainly does.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive today.